Hey y'all, welcome to the Two Work Podcast, hosted by Grant Banko and me, Adam Moreau. From entrepreneurs and athletes to the rat racers of corporate America and those who refuse to be put in a box, we want to share their stories and understand how they ended up where they are. Success and development come in many shapes and sizes. We want to hear about it all. So grab a drink and pull up a seat. Let's spill some tea and get to. I'd like to welcome a special guest, Dalton Guthrie. Dalton Guthrie played baseball at the University of Florida from 2015 to 2017, where he was drafted then to the Philadelphia Phillies in the sixth round. Also in 2017, he was a national champion, playing infield for the Florida Gators. Then finally made his debut in the show with the Phillies as a late season call-up in 2022. Then made the opening day roster in 2023 with the Phils. Spent a good chunk of the season up in the majors with the Phillies before eventually getting DFA'd and then spending time with the Giants and Braves through the remainder of the 2023 season. Now going into the 2024 year, Dalton is a free agent looking for a job. So if you guys have connects, you're looking for a utility infielder, outfielder, this could be your guy right here. But also beyond that, Banko and Dalton grew up together, so they have a storied past. Looking forward to just kind of sitting back and listening to these guys go at one another for a little bit. Hopefully, because we are in different locations, nobody gets strangled. But should be a fun ride here. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Banko so he can kind of take us away on this interview. Go ahead, Banko.
Appreciate it. It looks like Dalton's getting interrupted by his dad right now.
Yeah,
And
first minute. First minute.
yeah, that's good timing. That's good timing by Mark. So Dalton, I know you're kind of on a time crunch because you got to go to the zoo with your niece Adeline, and I know you're more excited than her. So we'll keep it
It's all about
quick
priorities.
for you. Yeah,
it's about
exactly.
priorities. We have some hippos today.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Dalton, I mean, I'll kick it to you sort of to give sort of your quick elevator pitch of sort of your life, like growing up and sort of being in baseball and being around baseball, sort of talk about that and sort of let's start there and then we can go off from there.
Yeah, I guess till I would say 8 or 9 years old, grew up at a field watching my dad play. Which as a kid, the good thing is that I loved it, and I kind of even as a kid, there a lot of kids go to the family room and stuff, and I just kind of always had a knack for wanting to watch games, and like I just thought in baseball, it's just kind of like what I always loved to do. I wasn't really forced into it, but I always thought in baseball, and everything even when I was away from the field, I thought in baseball. So I was lucky to kind of grow up seeing what it's like watching guys like I watched Ray Ordonez, and he was like my idol growing up. He was the Mets shortstop, and I watching those old time players and kind of getting to like meet them and play around with them after games and stuff was really cool, and kind of an experience I didn't appreciate at the time, but now I kind of do. And and then obviously have had that love for a long time of baseball, and but I was just fortunate to get the head start with my dad always being around it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll build off of that and give Kevin a little crap, and we'll bring Kevin on this at some point as well so he can defend himself. But obviously,
Kevin was the kid in the family room. I didn't want to throw him under the bus, but if you're going to do it.
Yeah,
so for listeners, Kevin is Dalton's older brother who also had a baseball career, but that ended during his senior year at Brown.
Correct.
Kevin was really good with Legos and stuff, though, so he would sit in the family room and play Legos. He's good at it now, though. I will give him that.
And Adeline is his daughter, so that did help him now. So he is in a good stage of his life. Dalton, I mean, I was gonna actually go into that. I mean, most people that grew up around the game, or not even around the game, but playing the game around your age, wouldn't even know the name Ray Ordonez and sort of him as a player. And like usually you say, hey, who was your favorite player? For us growing up, it was like Derek Jeter, David Ortiz, etc. And now we have Puck barking in the background as well. That is their family dog. So, Dalton, I mean, just go into that. What about Ray Ordonez did you love, and sort of what did you learn and pick up from him?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a young kid, all I would do is, watch those highlight clips of the shortstop making the crazy plays. When I got a little older, as Andrelton Simmons, and I never was like a big, watch the home run guys. Like, I thought the cool thing was watching the dive-in plays and all that stuff. I actually really like Jim Edmonds, dudes like that. But Ray Ordonez was my guy, and I thought diving plays and like, getting dirty, all that stuff was the coolest thing. And honestly, it was kind of the way my dad taught me baseball, or what he tried to preach to us, like without saying it, was kind of like the cool thing is like playing dirty and playing hard. Like those are the guys that like get respect from their teammates, stuff like that. And like not anyone can hit, but like guys can hit, and a lot of dudes can hit at that level. But the dudes that like earn respect are the dudes that grind and play hard, and dudes like Ray Ordonez that were just grinding every play, making cool little plays. I loved it. So that's kind of always the player I wanted to be, was kind of like that. And I always say Ray Ordonez, no one knows him except like my dad. And I'll watch Ray Ordonez clips until I'm done playing. So he was always my dude.
So Dalton, if I can ask now, so you have a very unique favorite player. You obviously have a lot of skill yourself, and you come from a decent bloodline of baseball players. So your dad did have a good amount of showtime himself. So now, transferring over to like your own career coming up, not before pro ball, before even college, like what were little things that you either picked up like following your dad around or watching guys like Ray play in the show, and how could you apply those things even when you were a kid? Like what little like things did you peel away from like what you observed being a kid in a candy store just watching professional baseball pretty much for your entire childhood to then practice and get better on your own?
Yeah, I think like even because I always tell people, when they ask like about like how I was in Little League or something, I wasn't really that good in Little League. But I always, even from a young age, I took pride in being like a dirt dog, even when I wasn't great. And it's because when my dad would, play against or play with guys like like Sammy Sosa and like some crazy great players, and the only dudes he ever really talked to us about were guys like he was amazed with like Ray Ordonez and I was Roberto Alomar. He was really good too, but he loved the way Roberto Alomar played, and he only talked about the dudes that he respected because of how hard they played. And so when as a kid, I was like, well, I mean, you want to earn your dad's respect and everything like that, right? And I was like, well, I'm going to play hard. Like that's what I'm going to take pride in, no matter what. And so even when I wasn't a great player, or when I wasn't playing well, the only thing I really tried to take pride in was being a dirt dog and giving everything. And that's kind of the only thing that really was important to me.
So when you talk about like being a dirt dog, obviously this is like a mantra that you tried to follow. It's something that you felt like you really could control, right? Like you can't always control if you get a hit. You can't always control the result if you win or lose, but you can control how hard you play. So even like what were little things maybe that you felt like were a good testament to how hard you went? Like at the end of the day, like was it as simple as like I've got dirt on my jersey, like I did what I needed to do today? Or like what fulfilled that for you? Like what was the mentality of being a dirt dog?
Yeah, I think it internally. I think internally if you did every single thing. So I always think back to I was in low A, and I was struggling at the time. I think I was 1 for 31 or something. It was really struggling, and I was playing shortstop, and and 2 balls in a row, I think, went right between my legs. It was a really, so I'm a super low point in my career right now. And so 2 balls go through my legs, and the next play is like a foul ball into foul territory, and I dove and I like banged against the wall, and I didn't catch the ball. And I remember getting back to shortstop, and I'm going like, I'm playing too hard for me to keep struggling. Like, I don't deserve this. And it was almost like it's almost a thing where it's like, I don't deserve this. Like, I have to come out of this. It's just the way it has to be. Cause like, I'm playing too hard. Like, it's not going to survive. It's not going to last. So it was kind of always like a thing for, it was always like a thing to fall back on. Like, I always like believed that because of how I played and how much effort I give, like, I didn't deserve to not have success. So I had to eventually have success. And, there's times where, if you're not doing well and then you start pouting and you start, not doing anything, you stop lifting when you're supposed to lift, just like little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, well, like, I'm not doing anything right. Like, I probably don't deserve success because I'm not really doing the stuff that I should be doing, like hustling balls out and stuff like that. Then like maybe that slump turns into what you are. And it's not just a little point. Like, maybe you just start to not be able to hit well. So it always was kind of like a positive and a bad situation, I guess.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's a good thing to have, right? You have this guardrail or this mantra that you can always fall back on to either self-correct, kind of bring you back to center. Obviously, like, Banko and I played baseball nowhere near at the level that you've played it at, but I definitely feel like going up to the plate and being able to like trust who you are, going out in the field and being able to trust who you are is huge. I'm even curious. I know we're here to interview you, but let's dish this over real quick to Mr. Corporate Banko. Like, even so, like, dude, is that the same thing? Like, dirt dog mentality in the corporate world? Like, are there any like equitable things you can pull on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I wouldn't use dirt dog in the corporate America world. I would definitely use control what you can control. Basically look at the controllables and basically make sure you're doing those and whatever you're doing in life. I mean, specifically to kind of the finance world that I'm in, you're sort of dependent on what's going on certain things in the stock market, if it's going up or down, and what the Fed's doing with interest rates. I mean, some of that stuff you can't control no matter what. So doing the work that you're doing and looking at companies, digging into sort of the financials of it, understanding the business, talking to the management of the companies, doing the things that will give you the most information possible and sort of the best understanding and the grasp on what you're looking at definitely comes into play there. But there are unforeseen things that you just can't control, and over time that should correct. Just like Dalton's kind of said, it's as long as you're doing the things that you need to be doing and looking at. So yeah, there is definitely a transition there, and I think going from the baseball world to corporate America, a lot of the stuff I learned in baseball, practicing and sort of managing emotions, etc., and that kind of thing did pass over to the working world. So I would definitely agree with that.
Very cool. And then I think I have one last thing that I really want to hit on before I listen to you guys go at each other's throats for a little bit. But so Dalton, I don't even know if Banko ran this by you, but the name of our podcast is T-Work. And the idea of that is like, what are the routines? What are the things that you go through to help you become who you are? And obviously we hit on that with like your mantra and like where you started. I'm curious how that changed as you've gotten into pro ball, as you've been exposed to all the technology, all the information, all scouting. And I'm not saying that you need to give us every single thing you do on a daily basis, but I'm very curious either like what has stuck with you always and forever throughout your career, as well as what are things that you find very impactful that you've been exposed to since being in professional baseball.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing you learn is you kind of, your routine turns into the stuff that's worked for you. So, I always tell people, because you always hear the failure leads to success, all that stuff, but when I think about my progression as a hitter and stuff, I was okay hitting, and I've gotten better, and I think about like what I know about hitting, and everything I know about hitting and everything that I apply to my swing and I focus on. It's stuff that I really struggled on. So I talk about like that 1 for 31 time, and I like to this day I remember the correction I made was really focusing on keeping my back heel in the ground the entire time, and that's what got me out of that slump. And it's kind of always in my memory bank for if I have a similar problem where I'm lunging like I was and I can't keep my weight on my backside. I'll try the maybe keep your heel in the ground and keep it there the whole time. And so it was that failure that gave me that cue to where later on, like I could use that if I, start to have the same problem. So everything I've learned in hitting from sucking is how I became a better hitter. And I know it's cliche, but like it's how it works. No one gets into that cage and just starts raking and never stops raking. Like you'll suck and you have to lean back on when you did suck and you figured it out, and that's what helps you get through it again. So my routine is basically stuff that I've discovered works for me in the past through failure, and I implement it depending on what I'm feeling that day. If I'm feeling like I'm lunging a little bit, I might try that heel trick or a little drill that's worked for me in the past where I start feeling more top hand dominant if it's getting weak. So just little stuff like that. It'll change from day to day, but it's all based on stuff that has worked for me in the past.
That's really cool. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. As I know, I do some work in the professional baseball world, kind of on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
more with pitchers, trying to keep those guys healthy. And so much of what I do is with collecting data and analyzing the way the ball moves and all of that. So it really interests me to hear how you can take everything that's so complex and just keep it simple to what you can control. I know you get inundated every day with a full scouting report. This is how a pitch moves. This is how the ball breaks. This is like the release angle you can expect. And that's just on one pitch. And now let's move to this completely different arsenal or completely different pitcher that you have to be prepared for on a given day. So I get like point B to that question is like, so now like you have these reports. How do you distill that to bring it back to something impactful to you and not just impactful to your entire roster of all your teammates?
Yeah, so in a kind of similar thing to what I said. So I base how I've had success off certain guys in the past, and that's how I plan my what I'm going to do in that bat. So I'll take a guy like someone with a high spin rate. I can't think of one, but say there's a high spin rate guy.
Okay.
And personally, I know that when my hands are a little bit higher, I hit guys with high spin rate better. That's when I've had success in the past. So when I'll see the numbers on the usually around 2,400 RPM is where I start thinking like, okay, high spin rate guy, and I'll start trying to envision what that fastball looks like in my head. It'll probably be a little up in the zone, and I'll be looking in that spot, and I'll be thinking with my high hands, get down to that ball. And just like you kind of start thinking of, okay, this is 2,400. This is kind of what that other guy with 2,400's ball looked like. So imagine that ball, and then how have you had success with that pitch before? So I'll be like, all right, I might have to be a little bit higher at the hands and think like keep my hands up when I'm about to swing so that I can get to that ball. Just kind of envisioning guys with similar numbers in the past has worked for me. Then you can kind of do it for the same thing with sinker guys that I've had success with. Usually my hands are a little bit lower with sinker guys because your hands are just closer to the ball in reality. That's how it works for me. And you envision it, you remember, what those numbers are for like 1800, I think is around what I start thinking sinker. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of the same thing. You remember how you've had success in the past, and you kind of try to do similar things. And the more information, the more you play the game, you start picking up little things like that too. Like, all right, this is how I've hit this guy with this kind of RPM, and now let's take that similar approach. And that's why experience is so invaluable, really.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Obviously, I can talk about data, metrics, StatCast stuff all day, every day. But before I nerd out, Banko, let's let you hit Dalton with some questions.
Yeah, I was giving you some time just because I've known Dalton for a long time, so I wanted to sort of let you sort of get some of your questions out. I guess
I'll jump back in. Don't you worry.
Yeah, no, I know. Dalton, I think that's the first time I've ever heard you talk about visualization, and sort of using that. So I'm kind of curious, when did that sort of come into your play? I mean, obviously, some for background for some other people listening is your dad was a big mental Tony Robbins guy, listened to all the tapes when he was playing growing up, goal setting, etc. I mean, is that kind of where that thought process came from? I mean, where did the visualization kind of mind stuff start to come in for you?
When I started sucking, so had to figure something out.
So when you say sucking, Dalton, wait, I'm sorry. When you say sucking, is it like sucking obviously is relative here, but are you referring to that one for 31 stretch? Is that just like,
listen, there's
that what we always fall back on for you?
No, listen, there's been plenty of stretches. That's what I think people don't understand is, I mean, those maybe not 1 for 31, that might be the worst it's been, but one for 18s, I mean, those happen plenty of times during a year. And I think like, and honestly, it's really like 4 or 5 games where you're just not swinging great. And but like that happens a lot during a year. It's a long season, and when you got to play 150, is that what it is? You're gonna have 4 or 5 in a row where you're going up there going, goodness, I don't think I should be a professional baseball player. It happens a lot more than people think. And yeah, no, I mean, when you start having those little things, it's literally just a mental game of can I take my emotions out of this and try to do what I know I can do. But I've in terms of goal setting and stuff like that, I've never like, I don't know if I'm not good at it, but I've never really had success like setting a goal and being like, I want to hit this many whatevers, steal this many bags. Obviously there's different ways to goal set. You don't have to do it all by numbers, but when I talk visualization, I've talked about, if I'm in the outfield, like if a ball's hit at this certain height, I know that's going to be close to the wall because I played there before. It's my visualization is remembering, during BP that I've tracked, is that going to be on the warning track, depending on where I saw it first off the bat, or is it going to be up against the wall? Like, just kind of remembering stuff from my past that I can quickly, translate to like, okay, well, I've had that exact same ball. I'm going to have room to get there. Something like that. And that's just, you can do that before the pitch too. You'd be like, if the ball's hit that high, I'm probably not going to get there. And same thing with seeing a pitcher before you even see him, with the RPMs and everything. I've seen a pitch like this before. This is probably what it's going to look like. That's what visualization stuff is for me. I love the Tony Robbins stuff. I love too. I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. The goal setting and all of that, I've never been huge on, but that's the kind of visualization stuff I've learned, I guess.
Do you think that, have you always done that? Like, has that been sort of natural? And I guess maybe we've just never discussed it before. So like, I mean, going even back to Little League days, Greyhound days, which it was his travel team when he was like 12. Were you doing that back then? I mean, from experience and sort of the visualization stuff a little bit as well, or?
I mean, I don't think you do it like knowingly. You just kind of do it. You when you want to catch a ball, you kind of be like, okay, like this is how I'll have success catching the ball. So I got to remember that I can catch that ball there. Um, so when you want to continually like have success, you kind of your brain starts thinking like, all right, this is how we had success last time. Remember this, and it kind of happens without you trying. It's not like I'm consciously trying like to remember stuff, I guess, but if your goal is in your brain, like I want to get better, it's kind of the law of attraction. Your brain will start doing stuff to help you get better.
Okay, yeah, I would
Big
definitely say that's
thing
I,
too, actually. Law of attraction.
yeah, I would definitely say that's not natural for everyone, and a lot of people probably listening that is definitely not a natural thing. I would say that's a gift. So just to give you a little bit more credit there, Dalt. And I guess I mean, going back to, so I'm 2 years older than Dalton. So my junior year, he was a freshman in high school. We were both going through it at that time with struggling. And one of the things that we kind of did to try to somehow get out of it was motivational videos on YouTube and just going down the rabbit holes of that. Does that still come into play when you come into slumps, or do you not do that anymore?
Yeah, I wish it didn't. Basically every day when I got to force myself to go to the gym. It shouldn't be, but I just like motivational videos at this point. I think I've seen them all.
How many times have you watched the 2012 TCU baseball video, like Grind or whatever it's called?
Oh my goodness, so many times. God, I always wished I went to TCU so I could be in one of those videos. I was like so lucky.
Honorary alumni, maybe.
Yeah, when the alarm clock goes off at the beginning and everything. I've seen them all.
That's the exact one I'm picturing. I think I watched that before fall practice my freshman year at Eckerd. I'm gonna say no less than 2/3 of the fall practices I experienced.
It was those are the best. We've seen the one where the guy's climbing on the other dude's back and blindfolded and he goes 7,000 yards. That's great. Yeah, but I don't know how much they work, but they're fun to watch.
So
okay, so that is still
like
you're still doing
that stuff that you still go back to. Like I know like you guys were laughing at this, but even like you've had success with these motivational videos, even if they are like the cheesy ones or like going back to like a simple quote or something, like you find that stuff impactful.
I think it could be short-term impactful. I think in the end discipline is what's makes the difference. I just think motivation is kind of a short-term discipline. But I mean, if I relied on motivation to get me to the gym every single day, which in reality I don't, it would be really tough to go to the gym every day. But I know that I have to go to the gym every day, and I know that's just that's who I am and that's what I need to do. So that's why I do it. But if I had to rely on those motivational videos, as fun as they are to watch, I don't know if that does the trick. I watch that and still go, I don't want to go bench. I don't want to do that. That's not worth it.
Sounds about right. So, Joel, and going again back to our high school days, I mean, obviously, you say you weren't good in Little League. You say you weren't good when you were young. I still say that your best play you've ever made in your life is when you were 10 years old. But
we both know which play it was. That's the
yeah,
and
we
better.
Hell, I've heard this story about 12 times. So
yeah,
I mean, I know what play you guys are talking about.
yeah. So I guess after I went to college, I mean, I sort of started giving you a hard time because you'd start posting on Instagram stories that you were hitting in the cage and stuff. And I'm like, oh, you actually hit now. So I guess how is your sort of practice and hitting, fielding, lifting changed over time as you've gotten further in your career?
You're talking about like off season stuff?
off season, and then we can go into in season. I know that's a little bit tougher, and just because of the travel and staying in and out of hotels and stuff like that, that makes it a little tougher. But I guess we can start with off season.
So off season, I'll usually start hitting in December, and I'll probably go like every other day, just hitting. And once I get closer to the season, I'll be hitting. I'll probably try to hit like 4 or 5 times a week. But
is that like mid-January you kind of change to that, or like when you're a month out of report?
Probably, yeah. I would say mid-January. And if there's live VPs going around somewhere, I'll try to go where. Usually it's in my backyard, but now I'm away from home, so I don't know what I'm going to do for live VPs. But that's always something I found very useful. Because my first 2 years or so, I just went to spring training with no live VPs, and when you're trying to, make a team or something, you haven't seen live pitching, then the first guy you see is going to be 96 for some reason, and you got to go time that up. It's not that easy. So getting live BPs before I go to spring training has been huge for me. But lifting, I just got to make sure I do 2 legs before every week and run. When I do my legs, I do a bunch of sprint work beforehand. And then upper body, I'll usually lift 3 times. I'm lifting 5 times a week. Upper body it's not as important, but it makes me feel good about myself. So I'll, like Grant knows, I have to force myself to stay away from the bench press. So I need to do legs twice a week. That's like my mandatory, and then I can have fun with everything else. But that's throughout the whole off season. And then, fielding, I just field when I hit, most of the time. And I'll if I go to UF is usually where I'll go to hit and field and stuff. I'll just field with Mike Rivera, who is Grant's teammate too, and I played with Mike in college too. He coaches at UF now, so I'll go up there and he'll feed the machines and hit grounders to me all day. So been lucky with him to be able to deal with me for a while now.
For sure.
I actually didn't realize Mike. So is Mike a full-time coach now, or is he still a grad assistant?
I think he's a grad. I think that's the title. I think he's a grad assistant.
Okay.
And he lives in Gainesville now. He's got a little daughter now.
Gotcha. So yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. We're getting old.
Yeah. Going into sort of the in-season stuff, then you're in and out of hotels. You've changed a couple teams last year. Were there any things that you tried to consistently do, like that would help sort of kind of ground you and sort of be like, all right, this is how I can stay in routine and feel good about day to day? Or was there anything that you do in that kind of, because it's kind of crazy, just different hotels, different cities, different teams, etc.
Yeah, well,
I think
what?
What's that?
I said good question, Banko.
Oh, so I think it was. I usually and this, how I'm a picky eater. So whenever I go to a place, like we'll be there for a week, and so that I don't have to sit there and think about what I can get. When I go to a place, I'm probably eating the exact same thing the entire week for lunch, and I don't recommend that. But it's made everything simpler for me, so I can just focus on baseball or something. And in terms of lifting, usually I would try to lift 3 times a week, but during the season, and I'm not proud of this, during the season, I start getting DFA and all this stuff, and I kind of mentally let it get to me a little bit. And I started being like kind of forgetful on lifts and stuff. And it got not lazy, but I was kind of, I got a little hamstring strain, and I was like, well, I just won't really do legs as much. I don't want to hurt it. And what ended up happening was I kind of lost my speed that I worked so hard for in the off season. And I wasn't really able to run like I should. And which is a huge part of who I am as a player. So kind of when I got away from what I should be doing to maintain my strength, I lost my speed and my leg strength, and it pretty negatively affected a big part of my game. So
it's something I learned from though, and I will make sure it won't happen again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to build off of that, then, I mean, looking back even at high school, college, and sort of your pro career so far, and knowing what you know now, what things do you wish you would have done differently up to this point, if anything?
I think the huge thing that it took me a long time to figure out, and I still struggle with it, is kind of learning to take your emotions out of the game, and just fixing what needs to be fixed and not getting emotional about situations. So there's times in the game where I've been doing so bad, and like I said, you sit there and think, should I even be playing baseball? And then you get 2 hits, and you're like, I'm the greatest player in the world. And it's just it's exhausting to ride that roller coaster. I mean, for 7-8 years now in minor league baseball, and it's just, if in the year that I had my most success, in 22, all I was doing was sitting there thinking, this is what I felt in my swing today. It went 0 for 4. If I fix that, I've had success there. Let's try that. And maybe it would work the next day. And I go, okay, let's try to maintain that. And there was never really like I went 0 for 4, time to panic. It was 0 for 4. Let's see if I can fix this, and that would fix that. And that was my year where I took my emotion out of it the best, I would say. And when it becomes more of a science for me, and not I'm getting DFA'd and, oh, what's my job going to be this year? Kind of like I did this last year. Where am I going to be next year? And oh shoot, do they like me? It's really emotionally draining to play that game and still perform, as compared to, let's make this correction and then do your job. And that's where I've had the most success, is when I take the emotion out of it.
So, Dalton, if I can hop back in, you starting to talk about like the removal of emotion and your identity from one year to the next, like where you had success, where you struggled. One of the things that I think is super impactful, potentially for listeners, or it's something that I've kind of been diving into, especially with the struggles that I had with shoulder surgery, like moving from something other than baseball, the thing that I thought I would do my entire life. For you, having these ups and downs, like what have you been able to like look at as your identity? Like, have you been able to find yourself as something other than just a baseball player? Like, where do you, or how do you value yourself, if you're willing to share that? And like, how has that helped you like continue on this grind?
Yeah, I think, and for people that have played baseball their whole life, and you think, I know I'm more than a baseball player. But like a lot of guys, and I have problems with it too. And I talk to my buddies, and when the season's over, like you're excited to like get a rest, and then a week into the off season, you're going, what do we do? And you're just like sitting at home, and you're like all I know is baseball. And obviously you're more than that, but when you're on a routine for 8 months every year, and then you just it's like almost going cold turkey, going, all right, you're done with that. It's hard to like think of yourself as anything more. So you'll just sit there and be like, what do I do? And it's tough, but honestly, like staying active and being around people helps. But when you're sitting there and you don't have baseball and that's all you've done, I know a lot of guys that have trouble, and some it kind of causes some stress that from nothing. It's you're doing nothing, and it's almost like you're so hyper, and so like you're like a dog that needs to run almost. You just like you need something to do, and guys don't understand that until you're not playing baseball, which I'm sure you guys as soon as you stop playing baseball, it's like, oh wow, that took a lot of my life, and now there's a lot of open time here.
Yeah, for sure. So even like divulging some of what I've gone through, and I'm curious if this is comparable to what you've seen, what you witnessed. Like for so long, like my identity was I'm a baseball player. It was never more, it was never less. That was just who I was. I couldn't find value in other things that I did. And then through like a long year of like self-evaluation, I think I was able to realize like why I never saw myself as more or less than a baseball player, but just that. And I felt like my true identity is just I'm all in. Like whatever it is I'm most passionate about, that's the only thing I care about. Nothing else matters. And for me, that was baseball. So like I feel like where I've had this like large growth in my personal life is instead of seeing myself as just a baseball player or just the co-founder of Flex Pro Grip, it's no, my identity is all in, and that can be a superpower if I use it properly, because I am just going to dedicate one thing or my whole life to one thing. So yeah, like I mean, I that was really tough for me to go through for an entire year, but I'm sure that's the fight you guys are dealing with daily. Like you said, you moved around to 3 different cities this year, and that's not even including, heck, I guess it's more than that because it's vertical moves within an organization, and then it's also horizontal moves from Philly to San Francisco to Atlanta.
Yes, I kind of off of what you're saying is and being all in and all that stuff is, I've always thought, or something I've started to learn is it seems that what athletics or baseball does for you is it gives you something where you can get better or progress. And I think kind of as humans, like you're almost hardwired to seek progression. You're supposed to grow. And when you're sitting there and you don't have anything to work towards or you don't have anything to progress at, you kind of like break down because you're like hungry for growth. And I think that's I know Grant will think it's silly, but like I think that's why so many people start playing golf is because when they retire or they don't have anything to do, like golf is something where like you have to keep working on that swing to get better. And you slow that score down, or in my case, it goes up and you have to bring it back down a little bit. But like I think that's what it does for people that have worked their whole life is it gives them something to continue to work at. Whereas some of these baseball players, they've always had baseball where they continually work at, you continually try to throw harder, continually try to fix your swing. And when you lose something to work on, you don't feel like you have value almost. And that's kind of what I think the fight is when guys kind of go into the off season and they like aren't hitting or something immediately. Or guys get obsessed with weightlifting is another thing. Those people that you don't understand why they get so big. It's because like they find some progress and they want to work and they're like, oh my God, it's addicting. Like the progress is addicting. That's what, and when baseball players kind of quit playing baseball, that like nothing's feeding that addiction almost is how I see it.
That's really interesting. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I mean, you're sharing it from the inside. So, I mean, I appreciate that greatly. Banko, what's your thought on that?
Well, I will continue on that golf thing. The funny thing is, my dad, in Dalton's word, Mr. Brian, is actually in the garage right now hitting golf balls and doing that. So, yeah. So my dad is definitely in that. So that's kind of where Dalton's comment came from as well. So I mean, building off of that progress versus end goal. I mean, you hear a lot of people say like, once they reach a goal, they realize that it was actually the process and the work that was actually the fun part. And like the end goal was really not what they thought it was going to be. It was just like, oh, this is great. And then 2 minutes later, it's like, all right, what's next? Looking back at the 22 season, you get called up at the end of the season. You guys make a playoff run. You go into the World Series. Obviously, that had to be a lot of fun. Looking back at that now, was there kind of that kind of feeling of like, oh, I made it? Or was it like, all right, now or did you just get kind of thrown into the season and sort of playoffs was happening, so the process continued kind of through that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, because you were there at the game and like, it wasn't like that when the game happened. I was obviously you're excited, but like the game happened. I think I went 0 for 3 the first game, and we're just sitting there talking about the at bats. We're like, I went the first pitch there, and it's not like, oh my god, I got to face a big leaguer. Like, it's not like that. Once you're there, you're like, okay, like it's almost like you've worked to that to where you feel like you deserve it. So it's not like crazy at that point. And then you go, all right, well, like once you get there, you go, all right, how do I stay here? And like you never allow yourself to like actually be content, because that's not the way you're wired to get there in the first place. If you've gone there, because I always talk to my dad about this, and I'd say like, these guys that get all this money, like, and they play every single day, and none of them like, take a couple days off to for like a little, if they have a little hamstring thing, like they don't really take days off. Even if they do, like, why wouldn't they just take a couple days off? Like, they have all that money, whatever. And he goes, they wouldn't have had all that money if that's the way they thought. Like, they wouldn't be there in the first place and making that money. So they talk about like Machado when he was injured and he was playing, and I was like, I mean, he's got plenty of money, just like, and you're getting it paid regardless. Like, take the days. And he's like, that's not how those guys are. That's why they get paid that money. And I always thought that was interesting. And like, you become a different person as you're chasing that goal, to where when you become that new person, you don't get content when you make it to that. Is how I see it, at least.
Yeah. And I guess building off of that, getting exposure to sort of the big league guys, sort of being with the team through a playoff run and sort of seeing those different mindsets, did that change your perspective a little bit and sort of how you approach things, just being exposed to some of the guys that have been up in the big leagues, like a Schwarber, like a Harper? You got exposure to them, sort of got to see them day to day in person and sort of their process. Did that sort of change how you had an outlook on your kind of process?
It's interesting to see. But the more you're around them, what you do realize is they're normal people too, that have just fine-tuned their stuff to a certain point. Obviously, I mean, like, guys like Harper, physically a little different. I mean, it takes a special breed to look like that, but to a certain point, like they're just normal dudes that have continuously progressed. And I sat there in the cage and watched Bryce Harper roll over 10 balls and have him, sit there and go like, geez, like, am I ever going to fucking hit a ball? Oh, sorry. Am I ever going to hit a ball straight? Like,
you can swear. You're allowed.
So, like, it's, and every single dude goes over the same. I've sat there and watched, perennial all-stars not square balls up off a machine consistently. Like, everyone does it. But everyone only sees highlight clips, and on those highlight clips they don't get out. So it's kind of a you almost put these guys on this pedestal, and obviously they're great players, but like, you put these guys on these pedestals thinking they can do no wrong or take no bad swing, and that's not really how it is. They fail just as much or maybe more, because they're facing dudes that get paid to make them fail. So obviously you learn some things. I was lucky enough that Bryce actually sat there and helped me with my swing on certain days, and you learn some things that I had never thought of, that that he's gained from his failures. So you do, but they're people just like you.
And building off of that, go ahead.
I got a quote for you. So what you were saying about, like, it's no longer about like watching these guys you like looked up to. It's about like believing that you're on that level as well. So I think it's so funny that you bring that up, or so ironic. I'm curious if you saw what Yamamoto said at his press conference with the Dodgers, but his exact quote was, "I will stop simply admiring the players that I've looked up to, but rather strive to become the player that others want to become."
Yeah, that's cool. I think I think once you see it and once you've worked there, obviously we're not the same guys. He's pretty insane. But you realize, like, they're just normal dudes, and they've fine-tuned their skill to where they've learned what makes them successful. But like, everyone in this game is human. And I mean, Ohtani's the closest thing not to it, but he's still human too. Like, that I mean, didn't he hit like 170 one year during that COVID year? Like everyone does it. And he's making $700 million, you know? So um, it's cliche. It's a game of failure, but like every person fails in this game. And it's just, if you continuously could use that failure, you know, obviously super cliche, but that's what it is. That's what the game is.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would want to hear sort of, I mean, not a lot of people make it. I don't know the stat of how many people have actually played in one game of Major League Baseball, but obviously the result was not great, your debut, like you said. But I mean, sort of take us through that. Like, what was that experience like for you, and sort of finally getting to experience being on the big league team, being at the biggest stage, and then going on a playoff run? I mean, you got your first year being up, you're in the World Series in the dugout, like day in and day out. I mean, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was when I got called up, I got pulled from a game in Norfolk, which was pretty cool. And I kind of had an idea. I think Castellanos had gotten hurt or something, and I was playing well, but like I was like, oh, I'm just gonna play, like I don't care. And that's kind of, you know, kind of taking the emotion out of it. That during the season, I was just kind of like, I'm just gonna show up and try to hit again and try to play well. I don't care what happens. Whatever they do, they do. And it's kind of how I was thinking during that season. That's why I was playing so well, honestly. I didn't really care if I got called up, as crazy as it seemed. I was just like, I just want to keep playing well. I like playing well. You know, it's addicting to play well. So I got called up, you know, during the middle of the game. He pulled me out, and I was like, did I not run a ball out? I've never not run a ball out. Like what am I getting pulled for? I was like, and he's like, whatever, you're going up. Pretty cool. So I went outside, or I tried to watch the rest of the game, and I got crushed by my teammates for doing that. They said, go call everyone. I was like, all right. So I went and called everybody. And I think the next day early, or man, not even, like 3 a.m., I was in Virginia, and I had to fly for a Sunday game in San Francisco for a day game. I showed up in like the first inning and met everyone. I'd never been to big league camp, so I'd met nobody besides like Mayton, Yearling, who were my buddies. And so I knew like 2 people on the team. Fly San Francisco. It's like the second inning I get there. They told me like, all right, like take it in, whatever. San Francisco, if you've never been to that park, is like overwhelmingly big. You like look at the state, like the scoreboard, you're like, oh my gosh, like I've been to big league parks, but like when you're on the field, you're like, this is a lot. So I'm sitting there, and then like in like the 7th inning, like they're like, all right, start swinging. I was like, oh my god, am I gonna play? And I'm like thinking like the 9th inning, it's between me and someone else to go pinch hit against like Camilo Duvall, is that his name? Or the closer for the Giants, who's like 101 with sinkers and cutters. And I was like, oh, welcome to it. All right. And I ended up not pinch hitting, but then we flew back, and we played that game against Miami that you went to, Grant, at home. Didn't go great. And then I ended up playing like the first game against the Nationals, and I got a couple knocks. But but like once you get those couple knocks and stuff, you're just like, honestly, once the first pitch comes in, you go, oh, I mean, that's not that crazy. And the first pitch I actually saw was against Luzardo, and he was really nasty that game. And I was like, oof. I mean, I've seen stuff like this, but this is solid. Like, this is really good. But I mean, it's still a baseball. It's no matter who's throwing it, it's a baseball. It's got to come across the plate. So, I mean, it's once you're there and you start playing baseball again, it's just baseball. I don't know how else to put that.
Did you start to? I'm gonna build off of that a little bit, and I'll brag a little bit for you, Dalton, because you're not very good at talking about yourself and being successful. So did you relax more? And I don't remember what game this was, but in right field, and you ran like 70 yards, sliding catch and foul territory, ended up on top 10. Did that after that, like did you was there more of a relaxed mindset after that? I mean, you made a big play and sort of on the defensive side. Did that help you relax a little bit more?
A little, you know, it is always nice to like dive and kind of like get dirty, and it kind of calms your nerves sometimes. But
Dirt dog.
yeah, right. So at times it helped a little bit. I do remember that game was against the Braves, and it was like a close game. I think we were facing Freed, and that was actually a crazy game because I'd never been to Atlanta. I think that was the first game in Atlanta that I'd played in, and it was 1-0, and I think Acuna hit like a 2-run homer in like the bottom of the eighth, and they started doing the chop and everything. And I'd never seen the chop, and when they turn off those lights during a pitch and change and start doing the chop, and they had just taken the lead in like a playoff race or something, I was like, oof, like I felt very alone just sitting there in the dark in right field, like, oh my God, this is kind of crazy. But you get used to that kind of stuff. It's cool. It's definitely cool the first time you see it. But you get used to it when you're doing it every night. And obviously the World Series and stuff like you're talking about, like in Philly, I've never seen anything like that in a sporting event. Even like college football stuff. It was right there with the swamp and college football stuff. It was nuts. I think that's like, I don't know if there's any sporting event really that's compares to Philadelphia postseason bowl. That was nuts. I don't know if you went. Did you go to one of those games, Grant?
I did not. I let your family win, so I watched on TV. What? What'd you say?
Ticket. Is that what you're trying to say?
I wasn't gonna
I
text
think
you.
this is on you, Dalton.
No, it's not on Dalton at all because he got plenty of calls. He won't say it, but I will. He got plenty of calls from people he hadn't heard from for a while.
those I don't blame him though, because that
was cool, huh?
Cool, really cool.
Yeah, and guys, I hate to be the one that actually kicks Dalton off, but I know Dalton's got a big trip coming to the zoo, and I've got a relatively sizable meeting here in about 20 minutes that I have to do some prep for. So maybe just like a couple last questions, because I know we're gonna have Dalton on again at some point. Dalton will be a recurring guest, I'm sure. So Dalton, I guess final thing maybe to leave some people on, as we said during your intro, at least my final, I'll let Banko maybe add something. He has the complete right to. But so my last thing would be 2024. We talked about controlling the controllables already. You can only handle what you actually have within your grasp. You're currently a free agent. So like outlook, like what are you thinking? Like, do you have a goal for a timeline? Is it just truly just be ready, stay ready, so when you get the call you can show up wherever?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be better as a player. Whatever happens on the teams wanting certain players, whatever. I'll get a chance somewhere, and I'll get a real chance if I get better as a player, and that's really the only thing I can do. Sitting worrying about who's signing where and stuff, that does me no good. So, I'm trying to get better with my swing. I'm trying to get faster. And I've had successes when I focus on what I need to do to get better, and it's kind of my formula I've had success with. So I'm gonna stick to that, and just try not to ride that emotional roller coaster and do what I can to just get better.
For sure. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Banko, you got any last questions to throw at him?
I mean, I'll keep it a little lighter for him. Looking back at
Good
your
call.
sort of baseball career and sort of what has been your favorite memory? I mean, if you go back and someone's like, all right, what has like been the highlight, like your favorite thing ever? And it might not even be baseball related. It might be literally going to a dinner with teammates after or whatever. But like, what is your favorite memory?
It's never baseball related when anyone asks that. Like when I think about high school baseball, like I literally think the day I'm thinking of immediately. Like the day we went to the beach when it was freezing cold with like me, you, Shambora, and Kevin. Like I don't even remember the games. I played so many games at this point. It's not about the games. Like I remember in college when we'd go out with our buddies. Like I remember going to certain parties with my buddies or whatever, right? And or hitting with guys at 2, 3 a.m. Like that's the stuff I remember. The games are games, whatever. You play enough of those. I remember in the minor leagues, like having 10 dudes in a hotel room watching some stupid scary movie or something, and like that kind of stuff. Like it's my best times are never. It's kind of enjoying the process thing. Like, but you don't understand that when you're going through it. You think got to move up a level, and then when you think back and you're like, gosh, remember that time in Lakewood when we were doing this? Or that's what, like, when I talk to my buddies like Vierling and Maton, like that's what we talk about. Like that was the fun stuff for us. And everyone says enjoy the process, but it really is the whole thing. And it's not, the end goal's great, whatever, but that's not what when you look back in 10 years you're going to enjoy.
Yeah,
really
no
cool,
doubt.
Dalton. I appreciate that. I know Banko can probably just take us down memory lane. I'm excited for the next time you come on to chat with us. Hopefully at that point you're signed. We're off in spring training doing something fancy. But we appreciate you making the time to come on today. Talk us through your process, what's gotten you to this point, what your key work looks like, and how you've become successful in who you are. So until next time, man, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that was fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course.
Even you, Grant.
Yeah, no. Enjoy the zoo with Addie, and I know you're gonna like it more than her. Hopefully, she's in a good mood today. She did get to bed early last night, so
this zoo day's for me. I don't know.
yeah.
They're just coming.
All right. Hi, everyone. Grant here. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you could like, share, and subscribe, we'd greatly appreciate it. Also, if you think you or someone you know has a good life story to tell, we are always open to guest suggestions. You can send those suggestions to our email, tworkpod@gmail.com. Thanks again for the support.